I'd actually like to invite our first guest up here on stage. Kurt, can you come on up? So, Kurt Collins, everybody. Kurt, how are you?
Excellent.
Thank you for joining us.
Kurt, turn my mic on.
Oh, that's going to be good. Kurt Collins is Director of Developer Relations. Is that a fair enough?
Close enough.
For Built.io. So welcome, Kurt. We're going to do a little kind of quasi-Geek Whispers here, our podcast where we talk about careers. I want to talk about your career a little bit because you have a kind of an interesting story. And then we're going to talk a little bit about community, diversity, and tech, and we'll see where we go.
Okay.
So anyway, so welcome. So Kurt, tell us a little bit about Built.io, actually, first of all.
Built.io, actually formerly known as Raw Engineering. Don't worry, Built.io works too. We're not stingy. Built.io is actually, we help developers build things faster and hopefully better. We are backend as a service, content management as a service, and our newest product is integration as a service. So we're all over the AAS. I don't want to say ass out loud. But I just did, and we're live streaming, so there's that. So what we do actually is we mainly work with enterprise organizations. We try to help them build something in weeks as opposed to months. We try to help in the world of IoT. Internet of Things is huge. We're trying to figure out different ways that enterprise organizations can interact with the different IoT devices that are out there, how things can help in that regard.
So Kurt, so if I'm going to, over the course of the next day and a half, I am going to generalize horribly.
Please do.
And stereotype the audience here. But the people here are mostly, God, you're all looking at your phones. You're scary. The people... Thank you.
They're all looking at the live stream. That's what they're doing.
You can just stay on the couch for that. But if I can mischaracterize this audience, it's full of server people, or at least virtualization people,
yes.
Data center people, Windows people.
Oh, no.
And now, it's okay. And one of the reasons I was interested in having you up here on stage is like your whole company is built around the next generation of stuff. So like, and not only is it built around mobile, Internet of Things, but it's built around as a service, yes. And it's built around the cloud. So like, are we all effed? Are we all screwed out here? I mean, how are you working with IT? How is your company working with IT these days?
I think every company has to work with IT, right? It's not as if we can, as pessimistic as you are about IT.
I'm actually very optimistic, but yeah.
I actually have a lot of hope when it comes to IT. I think that IT has grown significantly in the 20 plus years or so that I've been around. I think what's happening now is that the realm of IT, the control that the information services or information technology divisions within organizations, that realm is actually growing because it's no longer just relegated to desktop support. It's now, bring your own devices. It's now all the mobile phones and now soon to be Apple Watches and everything else like that. IT is becoming the lifeblood of organizations. And so for us, it's really important that we find different ways to integrate with, not just with IT as an organization, but with different technology infrastructures within organizations itself. Because every organization,
you have to be integrated.
You have to be integrated, right? I mean,
and Salesforce
has to work with Marketo, and they have to work with Microsoft SQL Server and everything else. Like, you can't just be in this one silo.
But I have this spreadsheet that I usually work with. Anyway, so that's a little harder. Well, so that's actually pretty interesting. How did you actually get started in tech? As a programmer?
I blame my mother. Goes back to when I was 6 years old. My parents gave me my first computer. Actually, 2 years before that, I got an Atari and I was hooked. But at around 6, I got a Commodore 64, and yeah, right. See, thank you. And this. But this was back in the days when computers still had manuals. I mean, now these days, Apple gives you, or Microsoft gives you a manual that's about 3 pages thick, and it's all the warranty. But back then,
and a baby can use an iPad.
Exactly, right? And back then, the manual was 200 pages of basic programming. And so my 6-year-old brain decided to copy the whole thing down, type it all in, go to line 20, blah, 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 all these different things, and just change some stuff to see if it worked and see what would happen. And I was doing that for years, and it was a lot of fun until I grew up and decided to build stuff that wasn't in a manual. And that's how I started. That's how I started. And then I moved on to web pages during NCS.
During college, now you had your own business,
during
right?
high school.
During
high school, I was building web pages for Rutgers University. I think I built one of their first web pages, not their first one, but one of their first ones, and it had beautiful frames and everything that we hate today.
Blink tag, maybe?
I did not do a blink tag. I had class at the time. But yeah, it was back in 1992, and it was built for NCSA Mosaic, and I fell in love with the fact that I could change something and immediately see the effect of it. Which prior to that, you couldn't really do as easily in programming.
Right. And you also worked for SGI, the real SGI.
The real SGI.
Onyx, represent.
That's right.
Iris.
See, we got somebody else out there. No, we were Google before Google existed. That's the way I like to put it.
You mean the cool technology?
We were the cool, hip technology company.
I had one.
Back in '99, and it was actually one of the coolest jobs I ever had because it was the first time I got to, within the right confines, I got to work at low-level operating system code.
So you're a real techie dude, right? You're a geek. You can do kernel stuff.
I'm a huge geek. I'm even wearing Flash cufflinks.
Ooh.
I don't know if you guys can see that.
Let me take a look.
See?
Oh, very nice. Yeah.
So huge geek.
Not actually NAND, but the lightning bolt.
Exactly. The lightning bolt.
So, but then now, and I'm leading you because we had a little pre-interview here. But then you got into biz dev. Or that may be a couple steps, but talk to me about, many of us are technologists here. Sometimes the business people, sometimes they're just mysterious, sometimes they're just assholes. But
both.
Talk about a little bit how you moved from being a technologist to thinking of yourself in business development.
So the interesting part for me was that I grew up in a family full of politicians. So we always talked. There was all kinds of talking. My parents used to take me to, when I was 10 years old, I used to carry a 12-pound video camera to all of my stepfather's conferences and things like that. He was a sociologist. And they would force me to walk up to somebody and ask them what they're doing. And I had to understand what these PhDs in sociology were talking about. I had to come back with 2 interesting things that I learned that night. And to tell you the truth, none of it was ever interesting. But like they forced me to interact with people.
That's hilarious because my friend Amy, that's what she used to do with Cisco engineers. She would send them out with a camera to do exactly the same thing.
And and engineers are kids, and it does work. It does work, and it worked really, really well. And so I think with me, it ended up being that I was never just left-brained.
Okay.
I was left and right-brained. And so at some point in time, I tried to break out of that. And it's really hard as an engineer to break out of the programming mold. Not only internally, I mean, I still go home now, even though I'm on the BD side of things and developer evangelist side of things now, I still go home when I'm drunk and I code. Like, that's what I do. So, but it was interesting for me because I had to figure out a way to expand other people's thinking about what engineers could and couldn't do.
But when you changed that role, I forget if it was with a startup or like when did you say like, okay, I am now the guy that's going to go out and be the talker?
It was at CNET, another one of my favorite companies actually. I was at CNET for about a year and a half, and I basically, I talked to my boss, and we were all sitting there. And I was like, hey, I want to go to these conferences, not just the developer conferences. I want to pitch our product. I want to sell our product. I want to do all this stuff. I want to product manage.
So you just jumped in?
I just jumped right in. But it was after that it was hard to find another job.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so because you had all this tech experience.
I had all this tech experience.
And then one role as a business guy, and so like,
exactly.
I'm not sure you're right for this.
I'm not sure you're right fit. It took 9 months.
Oh, interesting.
It took 9 months. It was 9 months that I was perfectly comfortable sitting on my butt playing World of Warcraft. So I'm not complaining about it. Yeah. But it was still 9 months to find another job. But after that, I I joined an awesome organization called PhotoBucket, and things went really, really well on the BD side, and I learned a lot. I learned about reading contracts and everything else like that. I learned that for some reason you're expected to go to work from 9 to 5 every day, and then you're expected to party from 5 till midnight so that you can get leads and deals and so on and so forth, right? So I mean, there are lots of things that were fascinating about that that today has led me to be the developer evangelist, because I can do both sides of it. So
I have many friends who are now have titles of developer evangelists. Some of them sail through gracefully. Some of them have management that seems to be focused on the wrong kind of metrics, like how many, they struggle with metrics, like how do I know that you're productive? How many meetups did you go to? Lead generation, let me send some sales people with you. Kind of very weird and things that don't work often. And so even on the social side, many of us are in the room and listening are either tech marketing or technical evangelists or developer advocates, or somehow have roles that are outbound technically, but outbound facing, but yet not associated with a quota, which is a very good metric because that's dollars on the table. How do you look at how you're measured, or metrics, or how you communicate with the rest of the team about how it's going?
So that's a very fluid thing, at least in my world. I am blessed to work with Built.io because, one of the things that is awesome is our management team is amazing. There's a lot of flexibility. At the end of the day, we're a company. We want to make money, but the metrics for developer evangelists inside my organization are less focused around how many developers did you reach this week or something like that. I've heard some of those kinds of metrics that are out there, and really focus more around making sure that the community understands what we're trying to do, right? It's hard when you're in a DE position to have a fine metric about, is there real community understanding? For instance, one of the things we're really pushing is IoT and connected spaces. It's going to take us 9, 12 months to educate the entire community, or even some of the community, about what that really means for us as a company, right? And so, but one of the things that's interesting is we end up tying metrics back to PR mentions and press and so on and so forth, right? And that doesn't necessarily tie directly into my job, but it's an outcome that is hopeful in my job, right?
You've worked in both, you're in New York right now.
Yes.
You've also worked in the Bay Area.
Yes.
How would you compare, let's maybe drill down on community in a second, but how would you compare the tech communities in the two cities? And a lot of, recognizing there's a lot of 3,000 miles in between of other communities, right? But those two tech hubs.
I'll say this, the Bay Area, I think everybody needs to be in the Bay Area at least once in their career. I think there's something different here that you really don't get anywhere else. It's like being in finance and not being in New York for a couple of years, right? Establishing your network here is extremely important. And it almost is, it's like establishing your bona fides. After being here for 11 years, I can go a lot of places and say, yeah, I worked in the Bay Area for a little while, and it actually moves the needle in a lot of conversations. I can't say the same thing for New York. I can't say, oh yeah, I worked in the New York tech community for a little while, and that doesn't really move the needle as much. With that said, the New York tech community is young, but it's growing and it's powerful, right? I'm still an outsider there. As an outsider, I wish that the New York tech community would take more advantage of the industries that are inherent to New York. A lot of the things that seem to be happening there, and again, I'm still an outsider, I don't know that I've seen everything, but a lot of things that seem to be happening there are somewhat like a mirror of Silicon Valley. But to me, you've got the fashion industry in New York, you've got a whole bunch of lawyers in New York, and you've got finance in New York. And to me, if I'm a tech company, I'm going to want to take advantage of that and try to find solutions to the problems that those three industries might have, just because they're right there. I hope that if you are trying to build a tech community elsewhere besides the Bay, this community here is pure tech. It's like being in Detroit. It's pure cars, right? I think every other community out there needs to build on whatever industries are present in that community.
See, that's weird. See, it's true what you just said, but the people here are not part of Silicon Valley, actually. In fact, most of the people here actually came from elsewhere.
Bay Area,
no, I know, but it's interesting. The people who have gathered here, we're part of this enterprise tech community, and actually our home base is Vegas. So, and so it seems like we're in Vegas every couple weeks. We see each other every couple weeks in Vegas. There's been a lot of steak dinners paid for in Vegas by the sales guys. So it's weird in that and a lot of people here are infrastructure even, right? Mm-hmm. So we're making a lot of money for people. We're very technically competent, but there's this gap still between us, the loosely coupled us, and these the startups, the Postmates and the Ubers and the whatevers. Yeah. Now I think that there's people are crossing over more and more, but it's really kind of fascinating. The things I read or the things the people I talk to or the places I go to about San Francisco are not quite this tech community. So I find that kind of a fascinating thing. We are people who have found each other through social has been a supercharging of this, and also the fact that we always run into each other in Vegas.
Vegas is not a bad place to run into people.
Yeah, especially when you're on an expense account. It's not as good otherwise. Vegas, it just smells like sadness and despair to me, though. I
think after you've been there multiple times, after you've been to more than 2 CESs in your life, you're just,
Yeah. Well, no, and then if you're there setting up, like you're there for a week and a half, you never see the sun. It's just not a good thing. But community, coming together, we've seen, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, over and over again, how it has supercharged people's careers. Mm-hmm. You're an admin, you're a developer, you're somewhere, you're in a company. You start to go to meetups. You start to blog. You start to write articles, freelance. You start to get out there and start to be a communicator, videos, whatever. And all of a sudden, things happen then slowly and then all at once. And all of a sudden, you're off on a whole brand new career trajectory. So you have always been tinkering from a young age, but how would you say community or your network of friends, family, acquaintance, associates has affected your career path?
Well, I'll say this much. My current job I got because of my network, because of a community that I built myself, starting in 2006. In another life, besides my day job of BD, I also threw parties. Don't hold it against me.
No, that's part of the job, actually.
Yeah, and so I threw parties.
Parties are like the geek golf.
And it was great. It was amazing. Every month or so, I would throw a different party, and more people started to come, and it became a lot of fun for not just the people that came, but the venues. I never charged them anything, even though I was bringing. Oh,
you're throwing the events.
I was throwing the events, even though there were 200 people sometimes coming to these events. I never, they never charged me because they were getting a lot of people in the door, and I never charged them for my promotional services because all I cared about was building the community that I needed in order to do my job. Come to find out, 6 or 7 years later, that's how I met my CEO, my current COO, and I went to them and I said, "Hey, I'm interested in working with you guys." And they said, "Man, we used to love those parties." Sure. Okay. So I mean, for me, building community is almost vital to your career, right? It's whether that's throwing parties or writing blog posts or going to networking events and meetups and so on and so forth. I don't think you can really get anywhere, especially in the careers that we have. If you want to be a developer. You can become a developer, then a senior developer, then CTO and so on and so forth. You don't really need to join or build any communities in order to do that. There's a set career path for you. But most other things, sales, BD, evangelism, PR, marketing, all those things, they require a network. They require a community to an extent that I never understood before 2005. Maybe.
Yeah. It's... Well, our head's down in the code, right? You forget about that's the way you got to actually, meet people, know people. Well, another reason I invited you up to talk today is to talk about the nonprofit you started, and let's connect that back to community somehow, and both community and opportunities, the opportunities we get, the opportunities of our background, many implicit and explicit ways in which we were raised and trained and given as learned given examples, given role models. So you started, when you were out here in the Bay Area, you started a nonprofit. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, several years ago, a friend of mine came to me and several others and said, we've been talking for years about the quote-unquote diversity problem in Silicon Valley, but none of us have done anything about it yet. So we all got shoved into a tiny apartment for 8 hours while we tried to come up with what could be a potential solution to the fact that there aren't enough black males in technology. We chose black men because, honestly, 8 out of the 9 of us in that room were black men, and the other one was married to a black man, so she's grandfathered in. And we came out of that, and this was at the end of April, beginning of May in 2012. We came out of that and said, okay, we're gonna start a summer program. And then we realized that summer was a month and a half away. So we spent a month and a half trying to build a program and a pilot program for this. And we got some amazing kids that first summer. One of the things that we were focused on, it's called the Hidden Genius Project. One of the things that we were focused on was finding those kids that we thought we could help, right? I believe that everybody can help somebody. And I think all of us believe that. And so we were just focused on trying to find out who were those people, who were those kids, and figure out ways to help them. So one of the things we did was we gave them brand new MacBook Airs and brand new iPod Touches. All these kids were from Alameda County, and we taught them Objective-C, and we also taught them PowerPoint and how to pitch and all these other soft skills in addition to hard skills. One thing I definitely learned is that Objective-C is not the first language you should start with. But, I mean, outside of that, at the end of the summer, at the beginning of the summer, these kids lacked confidence. There were a lot of questions. There were so many things. I can't say there were things wrong with them, but things that were underdeveloped in their psyche. And at the end of the summer, we had a Dragon's Den where we brought in investors from Salesforce and Disney and a couple of the venture firms around here, and they had to pitch their prototype to these investors at the end of the summer. And about 2 minutes before they're walking into to do the pitch, we were not going to be in the room. 2 minutes before they were walking in to do the pitch, they put out a new build of their application.
That's brave. That's brave.
Exactly. It's brave. And myself and one of my co-founders, we opened up the app. We looked at it. We realized that it was broken. And we asked each other, you think we should tell them? And we said, just see what happens. They walked in there, and the app was broken. Not completely broken, but there were parts of it that were. And they found a way to talk themselves around it. That is not something they could have done at the beginning of the summer, right? And they walked out and they looked at us and said, did you guys know that was broken? You're like, yeah, we did. We totally threw you under the bus on that one.
That's some good mentoring. That's some good mentoring.
Sometimes you got to know when to just stay hands off. But I mean, the confidence that they showed that day, that's all we really wanted out of this whole thing, right? We didn't need them to be able to build the absolute best mobile application on the planet. But that led to us turning it into an after-school program and a weekend program, and now they're doing amazing. Those same kids some of them are in college. We've got 10, 20 kids in the program currently now. It's all based out of Oakland, and we're growing every year.
That's great. It's such a, we got to use some words for it, so let's use the word diversity. Diversity in tech, it's such kind of a thorny problem. It's a very, another word people use, intersectionality, right? Because there are many parts to it, right? I think of them as kind of orthogonal axes coming in. I mean, even in this, we talk a lot about gender diversity and women and men in tech. Even at this conference, at one point, my goal was to try to actually get an equal number of men and women presenting. I almost had that, and then some people canceled, and somebody had a family emergency, and I ran out of room, so I actually didn't make it. But it's definitely possible. Certainly it's possible. You just have to look beyond, like, the 5 guys that always talk about DevOps, right? I mean, they're genius dudes, but they're just the 5 guys, and they're there at Cisco Live, and they're there all the time. So you have to look beyond that a little bit. and it's changing. But I don't know, it's challenging. And they also talk about leaky pipeline, and I think there's been a lot of really cogent writing recently, especially from women in tech, about how just like, screw you, this is not leaky pipeline, you just treated me like shit and I'm leaving, you know? So there's so many factors, socioeconomic, work culture, I don't know. So maybe in the context of the program and stuff, what are you guys trying to accomplish? How do you think you can help? How do you think we can change the world? Or are part of it?
Let me take it outside of the context of the program for a second and say, I am a huge believer in the fact that I would like to see more of me across the table when I'm negotiating a deal or something like that, right? But at the same time, I would also, as much as I like to focus on, as much as our program focuses on black men, which is, great for us.
You start somewhere.
You got to start somewhere.
Right?
For me personally, it's more about diversity of thought than it is about anything else. I've been a techie my entire life, even before I knew that I was a techie. And one of the things that has bothered me lately in the tech community is less about the fact that there aren't enough women or there aren't enough black people or aren't enough Latinos and so on and so forth. It's more that we keep building the same things over and over again. As soon as somebody built Foursquare, or Dodgeball actually, then everything else was Foursquare and all these other things that were clones essentially. Oh, it's like Foursquare, but different. As soon as we build one thing, we just carbon copy it. And in part, I blame us techies. In part, I blame the money. I blame the VCs because that's what they choose to fund. So obviously, we're going to follow the money.
Are you telling me if I go to Sand Hill Road and sit at one of those really nice wooden tables, they have a narrow, not a narrow view of the world?
Yeah, a little bit. Of course, now I'm never going to get funded again. But but also, I think it's hard for me even. It's hard for me. Like, I can understand why a VC is going to sit across the table and say, you know what? Pattern recognition says this guy, college dropout, he's going to do well, so I'm going to invest in him.
Looks just like Mark Zuckerberg.
Exactly. Looks just like Zuck.
That's a real quote.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've had several horrible experiences with VCs, where one of them essentially told me, you're going to need to get a white co-founder in order to get this funded. Not essentially. I mean, that actually happened. And I liked his honesty. I'm not the only one that has gotten that either. So I think the issue here is that nobody's really willing to think outside of their own box. I try to think outside of my box, but a lot of other people are just like, hey, I understand this one thing. I'm going to invest in this one thing as soon as I see it. And it's the same thing with the builders.
For us, it's storage startups. We just keep on making the new storage startup.
Exactly. For me, it's the same thing, right? It's like I know what I like and I know what I want to build, so I keep building similar things. I have to find ways to break myself purposely out of that box of the things that I build, and I think every entrepreneur has to do that too. And when it comes to the program itself, one of the things that was really important for us wasn't that these kids end up becoming techies or, they should be able to go off and do whatever career it is that they want to do. The thing that's important is that they feel comfortable walking into any room and expressing what they're interested in a way that can get other people to listen to them. Because that is the only way I think we're going to end up changing what happens, right? I need to get people to listen to me about this one thing in my community, the black community in Oakland or whatever. This is important. And not only is it important, it can make you X number of dollars. And I need to get somebody to listen to me. I need to get somebody to hear that. And it's really hard.
That skill set can be used with a social issue, but it can also be used to my VP needs to pay attention to this project,
exactly.
And I need to be able to talk persuasively inside an organization or whatever.
Exactly. In order to do that, you need to have some knowledge base of where you're coming from, and you need to understand what's going to sway the other person.
Yeah.
You need to understand them.
People.
Exactly.
People, man.
Exactly.
Code is much easier than people.
Tell me about it.
Well, So where do you want to take in terms of the Hidden Genius project? Where you guys? How is that? What's the future of that look like, and where are you all?
So right now we about a little while ago we hired an executive director who is doing amazing things with the program. We've established a board, which is also an amazing thing. And we're moving it forward right now. We're actually trying to figure out ways to make the program scale. To me, in my head, one of the things that was always going to be important was I personally don't like to call it, and some of my co-founders might disagree with me on this, I don't like to call it a black program or a black male program. I like to call it an economic development program. Because to me, what really needs to happen with all of these programs, whether it's Hidden Genius Project, Black Girls Code, Girls Who Code, Women Who Code, all those programs, we need to figure out a way to build up the community and help them develop socioeconomically, but in a number of different ways, right? And that's the only way. I dislike nonprofits in general because I've worked in a couple, but also because a lot of nonprofits stick their hand out for money. And I'm a capitalist. Like, if you can figure out a way to make a business sustainable, that is truly valuable, right? And so, to me, trying to build capitalism inside of these communities, trying to build capital inside of these communities is important. The black community in general holds trillions of dollars in wealth, but we don't actually put it towards investing in our community or investing in new ideas. We don't do that.
Yeah.
And there are a number of reasons why that's the case. There's not just one. But to me, we need to start focusing on that. And I think every community needs to focus on that too. There are a number of communities that have been successful at that. The black community is not one of them.
Yeah, there is a certain universality to that. Again, role models, socioeconomic behavior. I mean, it's interesting in IT how many people come up. One of the things I love about IT is many people don't have college degrees.
Yes.
And they came up because they got a computer or started with a crappy computer job or help desk job and worked their way up. As a techie without a college degree, many of us came from working class backgrounds, which is awesome, right?
Yeah.
And then there's obviously in the black community there's other structural problems and et cetera, et cetera. But I love that commonality of as a technology as a bridge to socioeconomic.
And I think the other interesting thing that's about to happen that I think is, I think we're at a tipping point for the tech community because technology is eating the world at the end of the day, right? I think it's going to be extremely important to be a techie, not because you can get a job here in the Bay Area that pays you six figures and so on and so forth, but because every organization at some point in time soon is going to need to hire you, right? 15 years ago, that was not the case. 15 years ago,
just fixed the printers and
exactly. It was desktop support. Not to poo-poo on desktop support, but 15 years ago that was not the case. Now web pages need to be built. If they don't need to be built, they need to be managed. Right? Somebody needs to understand how that entire thing works. Mobile apps, all these different things are springing up. IoT, all these different things are springing up right now that organizations are not going to be able to avoid. They're going to need some in-house talent to do something. And this is the time when we can start to train people to be prepared for that time, right? So not everybody needs to be the next Zuck or the next Jobs. They can be the person who's, helping strategically, helping an organization understand strategically where they need to go from.
There's a great slide going around. I'm not sure where it's from. It's of the old the people in the Dow 100 or something like that, that were 50 years ago their average age was 100 years or something, and now it's almost the Dow 100 or whatever is all companies that have been established in the past 20 years.
20 years. Mm-hmm.
So we're at a time of it's kind of a cliche, but we are at a time of kind of big disruption, great disruption.
Yeah.
If any advice if people want to give back, if people want to get involved, if people in their own hometowns or otherwise, what's your thought about what's the best way to help?
The best way to help is honestly to do that one thing you're passionate about. Mm-hmm. There are tons of organizations that need everybody's help. But if you go out there and you do what you're passionate about doing, regardless of who you're doing it for, you're still going to enjoy that. All right, so that's honestly one of the best ways to help. Find an organization that you may feel some kind of connection with. If not, there are places online. Charity.org, I believe, is one of them, or hashtag charity, sorry, where you can go and you can just put your skills out there, and people will come and say, hey, I need this person, help me build something. So there are lots of different ways that, it's one of the good things about being out there right now. There's so many different things to do.
You could get involved in. Well, I love the way that you said you brought 10 people into a room and you just jumped in and did something, right?
Yeah.
This room in our community is full of people that we've done that, and that's really the only way things happen, is you just jump in and start. Kurt, thank you so much for joining me on stage.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate it.